welcome to the Newburyport Literary Festival. My name is Jennifer Entwistle, and I am the co-director. We're a small but dedicated group of volunteers who put this festival on every year, and this is our 16th year of doing the festival. We had a full weekend. Yesterday was full of events, and we've got a full lineup this weekend as well. We're only halfway through the day. So if you have time this afternoon, please check out our website, because I think we've got something for everyone, and there's probably more events that you'll want to see. So we are using Zoom webinar, which means that you can see and hear us, but we cannot see or hear you. Now, this event is different from all our other ones because it is interactive, and we're going to be using that chat window. Please make sure that your chat is set to panelists and attendees so that everyone can see your responses, because this is going to be a fun, fast-paced game where we want to know all of your input to put together this mystery. And Connie is going to get into that a little more, but that's my tip, is make sure that that's set so that everyone can see your responses. Now, if you do have questions for the authors, there will be some Q&A time at the very end of this session. So for questions for the authors, we need those to go in the Q&A tool that's at the bottom of your Zoom screen. That's different from the responses to the game. So all of your responses are going to be in the chat. Your questions for the authors will go in Q&A at the bottom of your screen. So finally, I just want to remind everyone, this is Independent Bookseller Weekend, and we encourage all of you to buy your festival books from either our partner bookstores or from your favorite local indie bookstore. Our partner bookstores are Jabberwocky Bookshop here in Newburyport, Massachusetts, and the Bookshop of Beverly Farms. Local stores need our support now more than ever, so please buy your books from a local indie. And now it's my honor to introduce our speakers today. So we have Connie Johnson Hambley. She's a former lawyer, but her passion is writing great suspense. Two of Connie's novels in the Jessica trilogy won the Best English Fiction Literary Award at the Equus International Film Festival in New York City. Connie is past president and a featured speaker of Sisters in Crime New England. She's co-chair of New England Crime Bake and a member of Mystery Writers of America. We also have Richard Cass. He has published 5 novels and a book of short stories. The 5th book in his award-winning Elder Darrow Jazz Mystery series, Sweetie Bogan's Sorrow, was published in October 2020. Cass serves on the board of Mystery Writers of America's New England chapter and the Maine Writers and Publishers Alliance. Gerald Elias is a former violinist with the Boston Symphony and associate concertmaster of the Utah Symphony. His award-winning publications and audiobooks include the Daniel Jacobus Mystery series that takes place in the dark corners of the music world. His newest novel, The Beethoven Sequence, is his first political thriller and was released in September 2020 by Level Best Books. Lorraine Nelson grew up globally, but has called the United States her home for many years. Lorraine currently has 14 short stories published in horror, fantasy, crime, and sci-fi anthologies, and has won 2 sci-fi awards. She's the current vice president of Sisters in Crime New England and a New England regional board member for UNICEF USA. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
And thank you, Jen. This is so exciting to be here today. It's a panel that is so much fun for each of the authors because we get to show you, the readers, what we do a little bit behind the scenes as we're going to create a brand new mystery today for you. So mystery making is exactly that. We're going to be asking the audience for different pieces of a standard story, and then based on the information that you give us, we're going to create a brand new mystery. So we did this for the first time. You know, COVID kind of threw us in a different world. And we did this for the very first time a year ago for the Newburyport Literary Festival. And since then, this panel is regional and nationally with different literary festivals with mystery making. But what's really fun about this panel is that every single time we do it, it is a brand new experience, not only for the authors who might be doing, this panel a couple of times, but especially for the audience members, because there's always something new, always something different that sparks a different twist, a different idea, a different element to our stories. So what's going to happen is what Jen had described to you before. We're going to be asking you, audience, for very specific things in our mysteries. We're going to be asking you for name, settings, occupation, weapon, and motive. And when I call for each element, I'm going to ask you to put that in the chat box. And then Jen gave you a good hint. Make sure we can all see it, including the other attendees, so panelists and attendees. So one at a time, we're going to be asking you for certain things. So my first question, oh, and then I do want to say that we're all members of Sisters in Crime New England. And as as Jen said, Lorraine is our current vice president of our chapter. So Lorraine, just give us a quick snippet of what Sisters in Crime is all about.
Well, Sisters in Crime is an international organization created to support female mystery writers, but we obviously welcome male mystery authors as well. So though, we are a combination of sisters and misters. And we are broken up into chapters across the country. Our chapter, the New England chapter, is the largest of all of them. And we try to have as many events as possible where we can bring together authors and attendees and lovers of mystery. So if you want to find out more about Sisters in Crime, we have a wonderful website. And, we were not just an organization with writers, but we have a lot of fans who also join as readers. So feel free to check us out and welcome. Yeah.
That's great. So now my first question is actually for the authors, because it's important for our attendees to understand the process of what goes into writing a mystery. So the first question is, where do you get your ideas? Where do you start? So we'll start with Dick. Where do you start when you have an idea?
Oh, you would start with me. It depends on the morning. Usually, what happens to me is I will come up with one of two things. I'll either come up with a line of text from somewhere in the recesses of my brain that just says to me, there's a story here somehow, and I have to play with it. Or I'll come up against an image or something that happens out in the world that has absolutely nothing to do with crime or police work or anything like that. But for some reason, it ticks off an idea that makes me want to think, can I build a story out of this? Can I have something happen that I can make something both entertaining and puzzle-like out of this?
So Lorraine, how about you? Where do you start?
I start from a title. A name will pop into my head, a title will pop into my head, and then I'll create a whole story around that title. And I actually found out that R.L. Stine does the same thing, so I'm in good company.
Oh, that's good. And finally, Jerry, where do you start?
Who knows? It can come from anywhere. But like Lorraine was saying, sometimes the title, I mean, just the other day, I was reading something in the paper and I said to my wife, boy, he needs that like a hole in the head. And then I thought, oh, a hole in the head, that would be a good title for a murder mystery. Or it could be when I'm traveling somewhere in the days when it was safe to travel. I'd be going along and I'd see something that, might seem a little bit out of the ordinary. And I'd think, well, what can we do to make a story around this event or this particular place, so I
So
think
you would be setting, almost setting would start.
yeah, and I think the thing about the creative writing is that you really have to open yourself up to any possibilities, at any given experience, or even reading the paper, coming up with
Right.
ideas
Right.
from stories.
Oh.
So, yeah.
You talk about the paper. I don't know if the Globe still does it, but when I was in high school and college, they used to have these fillers that they would throw in at the bottom of a column where there wasn't enough space
Mhm.
or for actual news or for another ad or something like that. And those would be a great source of ideas because it was always something bizarre about naked man flashing an AK-47 in a rest stop in Vermont or something like that.
So what we're going to now, audience, this is where you come in. So what we're going to do with our mystery today is we're going to start with character names. So right now, audience, if you could just start putting some character names into the chat. So
And
we
remember, you have to have panelists and attendees.
That's
in
right.
chat in order for everyone to be able to see your responses.
Exactly. Okay. So we have,
For the coming
Susie Sampson.
Susie
Whoa.
Sampson.
All right, authors, we're going to have to write these down. They're coming in fast and
Yeah.
furious.
I've got a couple here. Good. There's some good
Okay,
ones
there's
here.
Ruth Wellbottom, and I
We
like
got a lot of bottoms here. We got a long bottom. We got a well bottom.
Uh-huh.
All right.
Oh my gosh. Okay. There's a lot of long bottoms.
They're
Basti
cracking me up.
Bumpington.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to read them as they come. Alfalfa, Allison Crouch, Cameron Botswell, Elsie Knickerbocker,
I
Anna
like that.
Banana.
I'm
you
liking
go.
Basil
Quint
Grumpington.
McCabe. Oh, what a name.
Okay.
Okay, keep them coming. Little Billy.
Uh-huh.
Uzi Susie Sampson kind of is evocative.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And I'm writing these down fast and furious there for
Okay.
Lloyd Simpson. These are great. And authors, here's another question for you. So as we're reading these names, certain names immediately form a full person when I see them. So example, I see the name Quint McCabe, and he's obviously, the big man on campus. He's the guy who's all that. And is he the jerk, the know-it-all guy, or is he like just this really solid guy? So when we're looking at these ideas, Monkey Face Jones, Arabella Oswald, I'm still looking at these. So authors, so as we're looking at these names, tell me what you do. What are some of your thoughts when you begin to name a character?
Okay. Well, I mean, Quint McCabe, as you're saying, I see him as being this tall, strong, broad-shouldered man, maybe a detective for a police department.
I already have a crush on
Private
Quint,
Jet.
so it's, you got to be nice to this guy today.
Well, all I can think of is you're going to need a bigger boat.
Right.
I think names don't have to be outlandish to be effective.
Mhm.
I'm looking at Allison Crouch here, and that's almost like a Dickensian kind of name. You can grab the character of that person just from the name. Someone that is not particularly likable, but is very firm in her opinions. So I think things like that are helpful, and it all depends again on the kind of mystery you want to write, whether it's going to be cozy or whatever. So
go ahead, Lorraine. Sorry.
Furious, like Angus Houlihan. I guess I kind of see Angus as being, someone who is part of a Scottish group that plays bagpipes. Maybe Angus is the one who ends up dead. Maybe his bagpipes are behind him on the floor and he's dead on the ground, in full gear, with his kilt on. you know.
So,
Well,
so
we've
what
got-
I'm hearing from you authors is that immediately when you hear a name, you're keeping that name in type for a sense.
Yeah.
So for example, we're already talking about, Quint McCabe, again, we've mentioned him a couple of times as a hunky guy, but I'm not hearing you play against type. So for example, he's not the 5'4" pudgy, non-athletic guy sitting in the corner.
Except somebody just asked in the chat, what about a strong name for a weak
A weak
person?
person.
That's right.
Which I think is a great question.
We could
Mhm,
do
that is, and that's exactly right.
We,
So talk to me about the thoughts that you go into that. Do you like to stay on type? And then how does that help your story? Because are you thinking about your readers as they continue in the story?
I'm not thinking about the reader when I'm writing. I'm thinking about the name and the type of image that pops into my head. Like Sam Agnew, I see him as being kind of a businessman, wearing a three-piece suit, always with a vest on, So to me, names are so powerful. They conjure up an image, and you can easily play against type. But it's hard to think of, someone like Stephanie Little Bear seems to me to have some Native American, blood in her. I don't see her as being a tall Swedish model, so names do play a part in the type of characters you're presenting to your audience.
And it's probably true of all the authors here, and probably most authors. When I'm writing a book, I will plug in a name at the beginning of the book for a certain character. But as I get to know that character more and more, I often will change the name maybe 6, 7 times until I'm really happy that it fits the story and fits that person.
Yeah, that's a great point, I think, because a lot of times the essence of the character doesn't, you don't sort of go into a book with fully formed characters in your mind. It's through the writing of it that you create these people.
Exactly.
And you realize who they actually are. So yeah, it's hard to name somebody you don't know.
Right. And then there are also certain conventions that are standard rule of thumbs that you don't want to have a lot of characters in your books that, whose name begins with the first letter. So you don't want to have Kevin and Carrie and Candy and, same types of names, because I understand that some of these more voracious readers, they're speeding through books, and it's actually the shape of the name that is registering in their head and not the word itself, which I think is really interesting. So for all of your voracious readers out there, we got your back, just to let you know. So now that we have more coming in, I love this. So we have Hyacinth Waddington.
I like Hyacinth.
I like that too. I like that too. All right, now, authors, let's whittle it down a little bit because we've had so many great ideas. We've had so many, and we cannot overpopulate our books. That's another rule that authors have to follow, that you really, even when we're writing, we're limited to points of view, usually 3 points of view. You can kind of stretch it out to 5, but you also don't want to overpopulate. You don't want to have so many named characters that the reader is wondering, who do I hang my hat on? Who am I really following here? So authors, now we have to whittle it down. Dick?
I want to put a vote in for Basil Brumpington.
All right. So we have, and we don't know who these people are yet. We don't know whether they're sleuth. We don't know whether they're victim. We don't know whether they're, the perpetrator or a red herring. So right now, okay, we have one vote for Basil. What's his last name?
Brumpington.
Okay.
We have a Hortense Merriweather. I kind of like her.
Hortense Merriweather. All right.
And we have, I liked Hyacinth Waddington, except, we've got Hortense now,
Well, they could be sisters.
There you go. Yes.
They could be
sisters. They come from a family of very eccentric parents.
I would say so.
With the names we've chosen so far that are quite extensive, I think it would be good to have a character who has a 1-syllable name. So I'm voting for Alison Crouch.
Okay.
Uh-huh. And
Uh-huh.
also there's, so Quint is one syllable, and then I just saw Chase Wilder come up, and I immediately think that Chase Wilder and Quint McCabe are rivals.
Okay.
That's immediately popped into my head. So
Okay.
we'll keep those guys on the back burner. All right, so I'm going to read out these names to you, and I'm going to say, thank you, audience. This is awesome coming out. Ooh, Trey Stark. Wow.
I know.
All of these great names. So we have Basil Brockington.
Brumpington, for God's sake.
Brumpington.
Okay, and then Hortense Merriweather. We have Hyacinth. We have Quint McCabe. We have Chase Wilder. And we also have, we could have put Trey Stark out there in our back pocket.
Try Amber Smith. I mean, I think that's a nice basic name. Amber could be anyone, you know?
Yeah, that's good. All right. All right, this is great. And hopefully, audience, you have a little bit of idea of what goes in there, but already you can tell that we're forming opinions on these characters. So, okay, audience, the next up will be occupations. Just tell us different occupations. You don't associate it with any names so far, but what have these characters, what are some of the jobs out there? Dog catcher. Oh, dog trainer came up already.
They're quick.
Yeah, they are. They are.
Backpipe.
Okay, audience, so in the chat, what are some occupations? What are their jobs?
Phlebotomist. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, we need some blood in this show.
I like that. I
A
like
small
that.
plane pilot, mini golf owner, taxidermist, an herbalist, a meteorologist. There we go.
I think a locksmith might be a key quote.
That's it. So audience, well, you're putting in boat engine mechanic. That could be regional around here. We'll get into settings a little bit later. But, so authors for
down. They're just coming fast and furious. You know?
I know it's hard to keep these going. Helicopter repairman, antique house restoration.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Blacksmith, deep sea salvager. You know. Oh,
interesting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're going to fit right in with some of the names we have. You know.
Oh, milkman.
Exorcist. Oh my gosh. You know.
Okay. Exorcist. Okay.
Okay, I think we have plenty of names, for occupation.
Oh my gosh, I think so. I have to say that, well, actually, let's start associating some of those occupations with the names.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And let me ask you this, authors beforehand, would it be helpful for you at this point to know where the story takes place?
Yes, for me it would.
So, okay. So before we get into occupations, because if this is going to be happening in the Mojave Desert, we might not have a boat repair person,
right.
Or an antique home restore.
Yeah.
So, we do have Morocco. Okay. So this is kind of Fast and Furious, audience. Can you give us some settings? Can you give us some locations?
Yeah, and locations, it doesn't have to be in a particular setting. It can be a country. It can be, in a particular, place like a restaurant or a bar or a pool or anything, any kind of setting.
Well, I like the vaccination waiting room. That is awesome.
Nothing like keeping it current.
Well, yeah, but think of the possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
The phlebotomist in the vaccination waiting room.
Right.
Oh, now we're starting to, okay. All right.
Market,
We have Back's waiting room, we have farmer's market.
A library, the Australian outback,
That's it. This is good.
Trade show in Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of possibility there.
Container. I haven't had that one before. That's the first.
That's a locked room mystery.
Yes. Exactly.
There you go.
I'm attracted to Clam Chowder Factory. It's got a lot of potential
I don't
there.
know. That sounds a little fishy, you know?
Ooh.
Ah, dun dun.
Well, yeah, really. Well, I think puns is another, that's another presentation, isn't it?
Okay, yeah, I have to say, Lorraine, I was looking at some of the character names in a couple of your short stories, and so you were immediately, you had Sonali Sen, and am I saying that
Sonali Sen,
correctly?
yes. Uh-huh.
Yes, and then you had Isha Nadu.
Isha Naidu.
Naidu. So immediately I'm having an image of these characters, and I believe that they're both detectives.
Sonali isn't.
Sonali
You
isn't.
know, Sonali is just, her best friend was murdered and she decides to take matters into her own hands. But Aisha Naidu is a detective for the misunderstood police force. Yes.
Right. Okay. For the and that brings me to another thing. But what I thought was interesting, and now so audience, thank you so much. And I also want to tell the authors there is a little elevator button so we can go back up and refresh ourselves on some of the suggestions that have come through because they're coming in so fast.
Yeah, they really
it's
are.
hard to, you know. So you do have that on the side of your chat box. I noticed that Isha Nadu, you talked to her about a little Indian woman, and just about 2 sentences later, you talked about misunderstood Maine with a population of 222. So what that did to me when we're talking about character names and then and settings, I immediately sensed a conflict there because here she is, a little Indian woman in small town Maine. They're not really known for being all that diverse. So I thought that that was really interesting. Can you tell me a little bit about your thought process on that?
Yeah, well, I actually created that for the, you know, for submission to the best New England crime stories, you know, and I wanted a town that actually didn't exist because I wanted to call it Misunderstood. And I thought to have a detective for the misunderstood police force would immediately garner some kind of a smile from the reader, you know, and
that was in this book.
yeah, that was her first appearance was a few years ago in the Snowbound, you know.
Right.
So, you know, people are in this little town, they're very funny. I mean, they're very friendly, they're very quirky, you know, and, you know, she's kind of an oddity, a fish out of water, you know, having to navigate her way through this kind of isolated little New England town, kind of in the middle of nowhere, you know, and so she brings an element of diversity. There's only one Chinese restaurant. The medical examiner for the region happens to be Indian, so there's someone else, you know, from her background. But really, it's not a very diverse place. So it opens up all kinds of interesting possibilities, you know, interaction with, you know, the local, you know.
But one thing too, and I also want to talk about Elder Darrow in Dick Cass's books, who is of Brahmin ancestry, and then you also set the stories primarily in Boston at the Esposito Bar and Grill with Elder Darrow. So again, that name and character and location or setting were really important to your books. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. You know, the way I got to Elder Darrow's name, I think, was I knew that I wanted him to have a background where his family had been in Boston. His father was actually an investment banker in Boston. The family's been in banking in Boston since the Revolution, essentially. So he's got deep, deep roots in Boston. And I wanted a name that sounded very old New England, especially a first name. And I think Elder sort of qualifies as that. And then the notion, you know, this is the way we pitched this book originally was an alcoholic walks into a dive bar and decides to buy it. And essentially it's sort of Elder is a man who's down on his luck because of his alcoholism and uses the last of his trust fund to buy a bar and try and turn it into a respectable night spot.
Yes,
So
you,
there's lots of-
you refer to him as a practicing alcoholic, and we're going to get into some character descriptions in just a second. But when I'm thinking about character descriptions, when I think of someone as blind, cantankerous, and over the hill, that's not normally a character that I would spark to there, Jerry, but that is how you describe your Daniel,
Jacobus.
I want to say Jacobus.
Jacobus, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, he's the protagonist in my whole series of murder mysteries that take place in the dark corners of the classical music world. And he is a sort of a really irascible, kind of brittle character. On the surface, somewhat unlikable, but his redeeming feature is that he's got great integrity and a heart of gold somewhere deep down. So in a way, he's sort of an anti-hero, but you know, the reader forms love-hate relationships with this guy. Hopefully more love than hate, but he manages to solve mysteries and, you know, getting dragged into these murders, kicking and screaming. But
Mm-hmm. Okay, so authors, we've had a chance to look at names and locations. So what are we starting to think about? You know, I'm thinking of phlebotomist in a vaccination waiting room. Who would be our phlebotomist? Would that be Amber Smith? You know, someone who's a nurse and in a background, and you know, she just might be one of those bread and butter characters, but she could really go either way at this point.
Mhm.
I'm
So we're
seeing,
going to say that Amber Smith is the phlebotomist.
yeah.
Okay. And
And
the location
um,
is, are we going to be good with the vaccine waiting room? But we
yeah,
don't know
that works.
where it is. It could be Boston, it could be Salt Lake,
Yeah.
it could be,
Right.
you know, Abu Dhabi, you know.
Mhm.
Okay. So we in the vaccine waiting room.
Right.
So and what about Basil? Is he there for a vaccine? Is he?
What's his last name?
Rumpington.
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 I
Okay.
think he's a Harley Street doctor,
Okay.
a London doctor.
Dr.
Oh.
Brumpington, I presume. Okay.
Okay, we have that. All right, so he's a doctor.
Mhm.
All right, and then let's see. I do think that we have those sisters, Hortense and
Yes.
Hyacinth. in
Poor
here.
Hyacinth, I think, is the one who gets it, you know?
Oh, so you think that we're finding her dead on the
Yes.
floor?
I think
Which one,
that's,
Hortense or Hyacinth?
you know,
Which one?
Hyacinth
Hyacinth is the victim?
Hyacinth is our victim. Okay.
Okay.
I think
And I have to say that what was it about the Hyacinth's name that did?
You know, I see these two, you know, older women, you know, either unmarried or, you know, their spouses are long dead and they're there for each other. But I'm thinking that they have a considerable fortune. You know, they live together, but they have considerable fortune. And, you know, I'm thinking that, you know, one of these people in the vaccination room is a relative, you know.
Hmm.
Hyacinth has sort of an innocence about that name, where Hortense seems more practical and a little bit more hard-nosed, perhaps.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Did we decide they were sisters?
Yeah.
They are sisters.
Hyacinth,
Okay.
like an
Different last names because, you know, maybe one of them was married
Right.
and, you know, one of them
But
remained.
that, I mean, that sets up a little weirdness in any kind of inheritance story.
Right. Mhm.
Okay, all right. And also I saw in the chat that they could be twins, and I see, you know, some
Ooh.
other names
Oh.
there.
Okay.
And actually, Jerry, you said something that was really interesting about the name itself. And you said, gee, Hyacinth sounds naive,
or innocent.
or she sounds a little bit more innocent. So what you're doing right there is something I think is really interesting, is that you're using bias in order, to kind of shorthand your way into a character's description or a character's personality.
Exactly, yeah.
Mhm,
Mhm,
But she could easily end up being a victim here, I think.
mhm.
mhm.
Well, she,
Right.
I think she is, I do feel bad. One of them did say, Kathy Harbor said, bummer, I suggested Hyacinth, then she dies. I'm sorry, Kathy, that's the way it goes.
That's right. No guarantees.
It's the way it goes. It's the way it goes, and that makes me think that one of the crime writers' jokes is "Be nice to me, or I'm going to kill you in a story."
Right.
So that's one of those things too that we
Well, we
do.
can give her Hyacinth a great backstory, so don't feel too bad.
Yeah.
Yes, we will. We will absolutely do that.
So now,
So,
is Hyacinth going to drop dead in the vaccination waiting room?
well, that's where right now. That's a good question.
Right.
Lorraine, we're almost there, because right now we want a weapon, and we don't know if we found her on the vaccine waiting room floor yet.
Mhm.
But right now, audience, we want weapon. So, someone said, Katie Bagley says, obviously it's a needle, but it might
It
not
might not be. It might not be, So give us your most, diabolical weapons.
So we've got syringe, poison, a
Boomerang.
COVID mask.
Okay.
COVID mask. No. Yeah, we can stop right now. It's a COVID mask, right? It's got something on the inside. It's got something
Thinking so.
breathable, like
Mhm.
some kind of poison.
We got that. We got that. So blood pressure cuff. Oh,
Right?
unknown
okay.
anthrax. I have to say,
Anthrax dust in the mouth. You people are mean.
Sanitizer.
anthrax. Oh, Sarah, glad we're
Nobody
staying
said
away from you.
bleach. I'm shocked nobody said bleach.
Yeah.
I know. Poison Band-Aid, Visine.
Latex
Okay.
from a band pair of old latex gloves.
Using
the
so
elastic,
knowledge.
um,
Well, that would be something like that. If you knew that a person had a latex allergy and they could,
You know what? Allie Nelson suggested Visine. That's something that's really easy. She has dry eye syndrome. Her sister gives her Visine, and there's something in the Visine bottle, enters her, immediately.
Well, I have to say that one of the questions I have a lot of times for authors is, what's your favorite way to kill people? And I have to say, you don't have that conversation in public, like at a restaurant,
No.
because people have a tendency of moving away from you.
Right.
But in general, what's your favorite way to kill somebody?
Yeah. Oh.
I think the favorite way is the most creative way you can think of that makes it a challenge for the protagonist to figure it out. I once used a Jello end pinned, for example. But
I tend to use poisons. I tend to use a lot of poisons that are not really that well known, like poisons in plants, natural poisons, because I think plants are an amazing method, like to bring into killing someone off, because they are so ready to defend themselves with all of their different poisons, that they.
There's a mushroom called a false morel, which is deadly, and I used that in one of my books. So you're right, Lorraine. Exactly.
Yeah.
I just saw human breath go by, and sometimes bad breath can absolutely kill you.
It can
So
slow
I
you.
agree with that one.
Absolutely.
I think on this list, hand sanitizer intrigues me because it's something that probably everyone at the clinic would be using. Perhaps somehow something.
There are things you can absorb through the skin.
Yeah, it could be added to it for this one particular person.
Okay, so part of this now, we're talking about, administering the poison. We seem to be going in that direction. That's fine. But what about, what kind of decisions do you have when you're deciding on a murder weapon? And just so the audience knows, there are weapons of opportunity. Like the most creative one I heard was picking up big lamb mutton bone and clubbing a person to death because they just had it with the chef. So there are weapons of opportunity that can be as bizarre as that. And then there are weapons of intentionalism. So that you have to plan to get the poison.
Right.
You know, so when you're talking about your weapons, yes, you want it hard for the protagonist to figure out, or a little bit challenging, but you also want to keep the audience guessing as much as you can. So when I'm looking at a murder weapon, I'm looking at detectability. You know, how easy is it to determine that someone has died? So, for example, you know, cyanide has very obvious trace markers when an autopsy is performed. But I've said this a lot, that one of my favorites is nitrogen gas, because the victim just kind of slowly slips away. They don't get a panicky feeling, so anybody observing it wouldn't really, you know, trigger to anything. And it's also very hard to detect on autopsy. So talk to me a little bit about your decisions when it comes into that, like, you know, okay, you know, someone's dead, there's gonna be an investigation. What do you do to hide the footprint? And what decisions do you make when you're looking at a weapon?
You know, because I tend to use poisons a lot, I tend to pick poisons that are slow acting, because I assume my murderer is thinking that this is the actual death is going to occur an hour or, you know, somewhere down the line, so that he or she is not an immediate suspect, you know. So, and I tend to use poisons that are very hard to actually discover, you know, during an autopsy. So, you know, that's why for me, plants are just really integral to a lot of my stories. If there are more crimes of passion, it's whatever's available, you know, a tire iron, or, you know, a solid, large, you know, cast iron pan, you know, but those are more intentional and they're very obvious, you know, to kill off. So for me, I generally like to make sure that my murderers try to protect themselves by distancing themselves, you know, using slow acting poisons. You know?
Now, Connie, when we began here, you asked how we come up with ideas. When I was writing one of my books, I was trying to come up with a murder weapon. And I don't know if any of you have ever been in these really old fashioned elevators. They still have them in Europe with this metal grate, you know, and a handle, and it goes up and down with levers and stuff like that. Well, I was in one of those and I thought, geez, this elevator could make a great murder weapon. And I kind of wrote a whole book, you know, setting that up, and the cops can't figure out through the whole book what the murder weapon is that killed this guy. And you know, finally at the end, you know, Jacobus figures it all out ingeniously. But yeah, so I think coming up with different kinds of murder weapons is kind of fun for the reader, and certainly writing the book, it made it a lot of fun too. I even got an expert from the Otis Elevator Company to send me a whole ream of stuff about ancient elevators, and it was quite enlightening.
That's interesting. I just noticed, I'm just going to warn our audience to please stay away from Sarah Glenn, because she's saying that she's bought an egg salad sandwich and just left it out in the sun, but she's, you know, for a few hours, but she's still going to feed it to guests. So be careful. You know, just
I would say the same thing about Jean Golden. She said, cut off arms, hands, head, and dispose of them. You know,
yes.
Jean, I don't ever want to make you mad. You know?
That's another person. I'm like, okay, we're staying away. We're staying away from you. Okay, now authors. Here we go. We have Amber is the phlebotomist. Hyacinth is our victim. We have Basil, Dr. Brumpington.
You can call him Dr. B.
Just call him Dr. B.
So is he our amateur sleuth? Is he the one who's going to, you know, we have to decide. We have a victim. I think we have a perpetrator on this. Who's going to investigate the crime?
Well, his reputation is on the line because the murder takes place in his waiting room.
There you go. And I have to say that, Dick, you do amateur sleuth, and you kind of lean into noir a little bit, and Lorraine is more police procedural. But with amateur sleuth, they're not a typical cop. They've got to have a reason for doing that. And you just gave him a great reason. He has to protect his reputation because here's this, here's this dead person in their clinic. Okay. So now we have that. Do we know what our weapon is?
I am still going toward the Visine. I think that it would be the
So you're going with the Visine poison?
Administer something into the eyes. Like somebody knows, apart from her sister, somebody knows that this woman suffers from dry eye syndrome, and maybe she has either Visine or a prescription eye drops that are, that she uses.
Right, prescription eye drops would give us a little more leeway, I think, as far as blaming it on somebody.
Right.
But is this taking place in the vaccination waiting room? Have we decided on that?
I would think so. Wouldn't you think? I mean, I think it would be more dramatic. She administers the drops while she's waiting for her turn, and puts some drops, and a few minutes later she slides to the floor.
Or maybe, maybe she's even she's so uncomfortable she asks the doctor's physician's assistant or whoever, do you have something for my eyes? Do you have something that can help my eyes?
Right. And then also this happens in the 15-minute window after your vaccination. Right. So then all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, do we have a vaccine reaction? Do we have something else that's going on? That's very true. Because another element to this is, the time frame for the perpetrator to get away. If we're going with Visine and we're going with poison, we are suggesting existing knowledge. So we are suggesting not a crime of opportunity, but something that is planned methodically ahead of time. All right. So that tells me that Hyacinth's twin sister Hortense has had it. And she's been looking for this opportunity for a long time to off her sister.
But it also makes it very obvious that she would be like suspect number one, Well,
maybe not. Maybe Hortense has been planning this for a while and has given the public appearance that she's buried the hatchets. She just loves her sister. All of that sibling stuff that happened growing up, it's all bygones now. And she has been planning this. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. And ever since Hyacinth dated Hortense's BFF, Quint McCabe, in high school, and Quint dumped her for Hyacinth, ever since then, she's been, I'm going to get her, and has been waiting for the perfect opportunity. And then when the pandemic struck, she thought, maybe now I can do it because she doesn't have.
Yeah, and she gets Amber to give the eye drops, right? So that deflects the whole notion of the sister killing the sister.
Okay, that's it. Yeah, and that also gives, a red herring for the reader as well. Audience, quickly, I'd love to hear motive. That's the last thing I hear. That's the last thing.
You just gave us the motive, Connie.
Pardon?
You just gave us the motive.
Well, not really. I'm just spitballing here, folks.
You think there's?
We want to hear your motives. If it is her ever-loving sister, what's her motive? Or anyone else, I mean, just come up with whatever motives you want. Let us hear your thoughts.
That's right, because the whole Visine, dry eye, sister, sibling rivalry, that could be the red herring that sets the investigation off in a different direction.
He says a nurse would not give a random person eye drops, though, which is a good point.
That is a good point.
Inheritance. I mean, I was thinking inheritance. She wants her cat.
I kind of like that, actually. You know, I mean, you want to do a cozy kind of thing.
That's right. And we haven't talked about genre, specifically. So cozy is, a very,
Oh, okay. Jacqueline said the doctor is the son of one of the sisters. Inheritance is the key.
Hmm.
Now, who would suggest, who would really suspect the doctor?
that
you
is
know?
great.
Yeah.
That is really good.
Yeah.
Mhm. So,
All right. Are you thinking of log lines? So you want to sum this up for us?
Hmm.
okay.
So we have, so the perpetrator is, so we have the victim, we think we have a red herring, and this is because of why. So we,
Mhm. Mhm.
who's the perpetrator on this?
I like the notion that the doctor is sort of coming from left field.
Yeah, I do like that. You would really, who would suspect the doctor? You
Yeah.
know?
And
You
you
know,
could do a late reveal of the family connection.
I mean, I would say that
Oh.
maybe Hortense becomes the most obvious suspect, because she's the sister,
Right.
and maybe she carries the eye drops for her sister, so she remembers when to give it to her,
Hmm.
and
Okay.
I
So,
mean, somehow because the doctor is involved, he's a family member, he's had access to these eye drops, but we would never suspect that,
So
Well,
what's
he
your
could have
first
written a
scene?
prescription.
There you go, right.
Right. What's your first scene? Do you enter right away with the body on the floor, or do you set up something else?
I would set it up, I would set it up maybe with, starting off like they're going to get their vaccines.
Yeah.
And Hortense reminds Hyacinth, do you have your drops? Oh, never mind, I have it here in my purse,
Yeah, we need a certain amount of backstory to get things kind of
Yeah.
set up.
We could do it with that. They're getting ready to leave their house. We could set up that whole, backstory. They live alone together,
And
How
when
do
they're in
you
the
create
waiting
it?
room, sorry,
Go ahead, Jerry.
when they're in the waiting room, you can set the scene so that everything seems a little bit suspicious, that the reader senses that something is going to happen, but doesn't really know from what direction or from whom. So you create a whole bunch of different possibilities, and as we read the book, those possibilities will narrow, of course.
Right. So you brought up.
Jean Lambert says the doctor is violating his Hippocratic oath. No, no kidding.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
If it's the murderer,
that's
he's
so true.
absolutely
Yeah, we
doing
got that. So what's really important when we're constructing a mystery is, that first sentence, first paragraph, first page, etc. And we've all kind of said that we're not going to put the dead body into the first, not the first page, certainly, maybe
No.
not even the first chapter. So what are you going to do to keep up the tension in your book in order to set that conflict up? Because it's the conflict that's going to keep us turning the pages.
I probably would put the murder in the first chapter. I like to have my murders happen like fairly soon, with like a small backstory attached and then the murder. So I would just have them, you would be, setting the stage, they're in their big rambling house or wherever they live. And, you kind of find out their medical issues, on the way out the door. And then they get to the vaccination site, they're excited. And I kind of wanted to come out of left field, that these two harmless little old ladies, they seem devoted to each other, which they,
Sure.
probably are. One of them gets her eye drops, and then after her shot, she's sitting in a chair, she slides to the ground, and let the reader think that maybe this has something to do with the vaccine.
Yeah, I think the murder at the end of the first chapter in this situation would be great. I think, this brings up an interesting point about how much backstory you want to provide from the narrator versus dialogue, conversation. And I think you could have conversation between the two sisters, which kind of reveals their characters,
Right.
and maybe gives some hint of the tension that Hortense is feeling about what's going to happen.
Okay, so what would we call this? What's going to be our title on this? You know, if it's a cozy, generally they have, you know, different puns available. You know, a vaccine time saves 9. You know, time to die. You know, that type. You know, something like that. You know, Dick, I noticed, you know, you've got last call at the Esposito. That's kind of like that snappy noir sounding. Do you put your character names in the title? You know, how do you?
Well, I mean, for that particular title, I was looking at what,
You know,
I was looking at
I'm
what
sorry,
happened in the
someone
book.
suggested an eye for an eye. I think that's beautiful.
Oh, there you go. That is a good one. That is a good one. Jerry,
Well, eye opener.
Sorry, I have to disagree there. I think that gives it away way too much.
You think so? Okay.
that's true.
Yeah.
I can see clearly now.
A bloodshot.
Bloodshot.
Yeah. Okay.
Bloodshot. Now there you go.
There.
That has like
Especially
a
if you have
entendre.
inheritance. If you have inheritance, you've got a lobotomist, you've got vaccines, you've got bloodshot might be it.
And, you know,
And it's a one word in and done. So
perfect.
that actually, that title convention kind of makes me think that we're into like a suspense or more of a thriller end rather than a cozy
right.
Yeah.
to it.
Mhm.
Yeah, very much
Yes.
so. Because, you know, that's true. Because I think Death and Transfiguration, Jerry, that is like, that's a title. I mean, wow, that says a lot. That says a lot. It makes me very curious about what's in the cover of that when I see a title like that.
Well, good. I'm glad it makes you curious. It's actually the piece
It
of
all works out that way.
the piece
you
of
know?
classical orchestral music that kind of informs the whole story and provides the background and the whole setting as well. So
Right, because I too like, you know, one word titles that have a lot of different meanings.
Right.
You know, charities that aren't that charitable, troubles could be troubles of the heart, or in this case, Northern Ireland's troubles, etc. So I like that one word.
Yeah, I like that. And that's a double entendre on, you know, bloodshot eyes. You know?
Right, exactly. So I see Jen is back. So that means that time is ticking down, but do we have questions?
First of all, I want to say that I can't wait to read this mystery. This has been so much fun watching all the answers pour in. We do have a couple of questions now. We're really close on time, so I'm going to ask one and then we'll see where we are with the other one. And they're both from Jean. So Jean, I apologize if we don't get to both. I'll pick one. Do you start with one name for a character, but then change that as the story progresses?
Yes,
Yes.
almost always.
Okay, well, that was so easy. I will ask.
Lorraine says no.
No, Lorraine, once you pick a name, that's it?
Yeah, when I pick a name, I just form my whole storyline for that person around that name. If I change the name, then it kind of changes the whole scope of my story. Yeah.
Okay. So do you outline the work for the chapters? Do you know how the book will end when you start?
Yes.
That's a really good question. Some authors have a detailed outline, others just wing it. I tend to have like an overarching structure of my story and fill things in as the ideas come, but that doesn't mean I'm wed to it. I often will change the ending, add characters, subplots, red herrings, all kinds of things like that.
Right.
I have, go ahead, Connie, sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, and for those authors who have those detailed outlines that they know exactly what's going to happen in every single chapter, I hate you.
God love them.
I don't write like that.
I have no idea what's going on